Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Happy New Year. Today, I have a special guest, a really dear friend of mine who I feel I know that we've known each other on a soul level, but we both agree on this and she will articulate it. And our relationship, it's interesting, it has developed over the last handful of months in these telepathic, psychic, energetic ways where we just know we're part of each other's soul tribe. It's Fallon of Write Your Story, my dear friend. She has her podcast. She's been on before, so she is returning. Hello, Fallon. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Amanda. It's so good to be back.
Yeah, I am so happy to have you here today, especially as we shift into 2025 because it's a big year. You and I have discussed this. I've discussed it on the podcast, and we are we are breaking new ground. That's the way that this year feels. And it's funny because when I discuss the astrology and the numerology of 2025, there's a lot of closure and change over. And if you think about the energy of the 9, 2025 is a 9 year. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. So we are in this frequency of closure and completion, completing a 9 year cycle. It's not the energy of the 1, which is new beginnings, pioneering a new path, but it feels very much like an eclipse, beginnings and endings simultaneously. So I feel like we're moving into uncharted territory. Do you feel that just from your perspective, what you're walking through? You've walked through quite a bit of grief and you're going through all sorts of cycles of personal, spiritual, energetic shifts. What is
Yeah.
your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that on a visceral level. I am, first of all, a religious listener of your podcast. There aren't many shows. I don't think there are any other shows that I listen to like every episode of, but I listen to every episode of your show. So I'm like tracking with you on the numerology, which is not something that I was super familiar with before listening to your show, although, and before just being friends with you. I knew a little bit about numerology from like the numerology of a house that you live in. I had done like, a little bit of research around that. So it's been really enlightening to learn about the numerology and the astrology year by year. And I feel on a visceral level that sense of endings and transition into something unknown. I lost my dad in October. I had a miscarriage in August. My husband and I I'm moving backwards through the year, but in May, my husband and I had a really um, big failure is really the only way to say it, a business investment that we had made, really believing that it was going to pay off. And we had invested our entire life savings and lost everything in one fell swoop. So it's been a year of a lot of loss and change for us. And it's been horrible and hard a lot of the time. And also, you and I have talked about this as I've sat in that horrible and hard, as I've gone into the darkness of it, there have been so many unexpected gifts that have come out of it. One of them being, which we talked about when you came on my show, this sort of like like a crack in almost like I don't want to say it's a psychic ability, but like a sixth sense that was maybe always there, but I wasn't totally in touch with. In the darkness of this time, that has forced me to spend more time alone and more time in silence and more time, just in solitude. That realization has broken through and I'm like, "Oh, there's something germinating here. There's something happening that actually felt like when I first had the experience, I texted you immediately because I was like, "What the F is happening to me?" It was really unsettling and kind of scary. That's the precipice that I feel when you say that. That's what comes to my mind is like there are all these endings happening, the loss of my dad, the loss of this baby that we wanted, the loss of this business venture, the way that we thought it was going to go, the loss of our life savings, all this loss. There is newness coming in. I also decided to make a major shift in my business this year, so there's that loss, but there's all this newness coming in. Like, there's all this space now, right? I just have more space to decide, like, what am I gonna do with this space? So there is newness coming in, but there's also, like, in the newness, a little bit of, the energy of fear because it's like, uh, it's just brand new. It's like, I have no idea. what is coming. And a lot of times I feel like because I am a pretty intuitive person, at the turn of a year or the turn of a season, I feel like I can kind of feel into what's coming. And I haven't really felt like I've been able to totally feel into what's coming. So it's almost like
It's
it's
the
so new that I
unknown.
can't. Yeah.
It's the unknown. It's so interesting because you all who listen to Allie, many of you listeners out there listen to Allie's podcast, Write Your Story, which is excellent. And I love Allie for a multitude of reasons. One thing I love about Allie is super astute and articulate. I mean, she's a writer. She helps people write their story, write books, publish. This is her bailiwick, her language of the soul. And as I'm listening to you speak, it's almost like you don't have the words to describe it. And it's not because of you being inarticulate or incapable or unaware, because you're astutely aware of what's going on. You and I have talked about this personally, but it's almost like we don't have the language yet. We're
Yeah.
writing a new chapter, a new book, and like you said, we're on this precipice. And what I think about, and you and I did an episode and we talked a little bit about oracle cards. And I have this oracle card from the first deck that I ever purchased. It was a synchronistic event where I found this deck. It found me, it spoke to my soul. And it's just for any of you out there, it's a lovely deck if you're newer into oracle cards. It's Colette Baron Reed's The Enchanted Map. But there is a card in that deck called the Wide Open card. And there is a woman and she's standing on the edge of a cliff. And of course, the message is the universe is wide open to you. But it's like that precipice of when the world is our oyster, when there are infinite possibilities, there is tremendous fear and doubt and worry and uncertainty. And there's this excitement and adventure and curiosity simultaneously. So it's like I'm hearing this, especially because you have moved through tremendous loss and grief personally, your husband's business, the miscarriage, the loss of your father. I mean, they're major rites of passage, the miscarriage, the loss of your father, business stuff happens. And then that changes our security, our finances,
Yeah.
our roles in our partnerships and marriage and allocation of money and resources. And one of the things Allie and I were talking about before we started recording was we have both been forced to dig deep and become resourceful and pull up creativity, new ways of thinking, shifting our perspective so we don't slip into long periods of depression, despair, where we can't get out of bed and knowing there's a solution and an opportunity, but having to go within. All of this resonates with the energy that we are walking through. Is this almost feeling like we don't have the words, the language, the ability to articulate or lay the groundwork for what's coming. And the message here is we do because we're digging deep, opening up new
Hmm.
gifts, new clarity, new knowledge in our cells and DNA and our
Yeah.
consciousness that may not have been available to us before. I feel like this is happening on personal levels and in the collective. It's huge.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm having knowledge that I don't have words for often, which is not that's not usually true for me. I usually the words come very fairly
They
easily.
come very easily to you, and that's what I was articulating.
Yeah.
I wasn't calling Allie out. I was just thinking
Yeah.
Allie is so profoundly punctuated and articulate, and she brings that words are her language, and I can hear her articulating, but I can hear her searching for the words within to
Yes.
articulate her experience.
Yeah, and it's wild because I've been having people ask, "Are you gonna write another book?" And my last book, Write Your Story, came out in May of
Yeah.
2024 of this past year. So I do have another idea for a book that I wanna write, but every time that I've tried to explain it to people, like, when I tell people who work in publishing and, there are people who are like, "What's your next project? What are you working on?" And I've tried to explain it to a few people, and I have had this experience every time where there's, like every time I write a book, I have a deep knowing in my soul. It's like the idea just comes to me. I know this is the idea. I run with it, and I've always been able to get that book published. Every time that I've tried to tell someone about this idea, it's like a look of total blankness comes over their face, and they don't get it, and I kind of don't totally get it yet, but you usually don't get a book idea until you're kinda deep into it, so that's not totally abnormal for me, but it's been really bizarre, and I had, like, just yesterday was digging through my I was sorting through some stuff to get rid of things, and I found this journal from about 6 months ago where I was at a publishing event, and we were unpacking book ideas, and I was telling all these people sitting at my table, "This is the next book that I wanna work on." And the feeling of their confusion as to, like, why I would write a book about this or what I was even talking about was so profound that I literally got up from the table, Amanda. I went outside and was crying. I can't tell you, like, the visceral emotional reaction I had to be like, "They don't understand what I'm talking about. Like, I feel this and they don't feel it," was so strange. And I think that's sort of getting at what you're talking about, that, like, I'm tapping into something that I don't have the right words for yet, and I know that it's true, but I don't have the words to help them see how it's true, and they don't feel it the same way that I feel it, and so it's like this weird rift. It
Yes,
I
and
don't know if that's
the
making
beauty,
sense.
no, it makes very clear sense, and I wanna articulate this in the language of the 9 and the energy of numerology and frequency. The 9 is about letting go, surrender. There's a visceral death that happens with the 9. Sometimes literal death happens, and I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but the 9 is about something dying in order for something to be reborn in a higher frequency, in a higher character, in the highest integrity that contributes something big, something that is soul level, purposeful, meaningful. And the interesting thing you said is, I'm articulating this, I'm explaining this, and it is falling flat. And then the projection of their energy, and they're not, they believe in these people. I'm sure whoever
Oh,
you
yeah,
are speaking with, they love you, they know who you are, your talents,
yes.
but feeling so alone or isolated, and then internalizing that self doubt, worry, pain, confusion, uncertainty, what Allie is articulating and communicating through that experience, that is the energy of the 9, where there's almost feeling misunderstood, unintelligent, not cohesive, not clear, yet in your soul, there's a clarity that you can't quite conceptualize, articulate, put your finger on. And then what the 9 does, the energy of the 9 will often internalize it like, "I'm wrong, I'm not significant. Oh my gosh, people don't get me. Oh my gosh, I'm such a joke, I'm an imposter. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going crazy." So
Yes.
and I'm sharing this because what you're sharing is so poignant for everyone out there, that lost feeling. Yet at the same time, you have this deep knowing where it's truer than it's ever been, yet it's landing flat externally. Keep
Yeah.
going. And the 9 says, yes, there's significance here, even though you may feel insignificant or other people may not get it yet. You are coming to something more valuable and honest and real and true. It's like platinum, gold, something coming out of the soul, and it's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that rings really true. Even last night, my husband and I were having this conversation about kinda how we wanna move into 2025, because 2024 at the beginning of 2024, we were so, like, motivated and empowered that we had
Which
an
is the energy of the 8. The energy, and, because I've talked about this,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
8
yeah.
is this drive, motivation, empowerment, boldly going through, and I say this with the energy of the 8 because the 8, when you turn it on its side, it's the infinity symbol,
Yeah.
it's a closed circuit, it's always in flux. The 8 creates polarity. If the energy is about drive and momentum and empowerment and traction and getting stuff done in the material world, you are going to feel the polarity of disempowerment, lack, dis-ease, lack of motivation, lack of drive. And it's almost like
Yeah.
you're going for something bigger, but you're being kind of reoriented into a stronger point of attraction. And a lot of it is through the polarity. So keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt
Yeah,
you,
no,
but
I
it
mean,
was, like, so significant.
that's definitely how 2024 happened for us,
Yeah.
you know? Like, there was so much energy, excitement, motivation, like empowerment through the even through the whole year, even
Yeah,
as things were sort of
yeah.
seeming scary or falling apart or whatever, I feel like we always were able to kind of pick ourselves up by our bootstraps. And then at the end of 2024, going into 2025, both of us are sort of like, I feel like we're a little bit gun shy. We're like, we have no idea what this year is. In 2024, we were like, this is our year. And 2025, we're like, we have no idea what this year is going to bring. And both of us are feeling a little bit of, we talked about this before we hit record too, but that we're touching into some despair that lives in both of our bodies that I don't think either of us knew was there before because we're both, fairly privileged people. We both are educated. We both, come from very supportive backgrounds. I don't come from like a lot of money or anything, but like, Matt and my family both are very supportive. We are both white. We're both, upper middle class. Like, so all these reasons that we have to feel pretty confident that like no matter what happens, we're going to get through it. And we've always moved through the world with that kind of confidence. Well, after this year, it feels slightly like we're touching into this feeling of it's not like this doesn't feel all encompassing, but there is a part of me that feels like it doesn't matter what you do, everything's going to fall apart. Everyone's going to die. People are going to leave you. You're going to end up alone anyway. It's like this deep feeling of despair that I've seen that lives in my body. I've seen in this period of time of grief. And now I'm moving into 2025 going, well, from that place, how do we do anything? Like, how do I feel motivated to build a freaking business? Like, how do I even want to show up on a pod? If it's just like, if everything ends in despair, then what's the point? So I feel like we're wrestling with that a little bit. And actually, to bring it full circle, the point that we came to last night was like, maybe the answer is with humility and with some groundedness that came to us in this year of loss and heartbreak, maybe with that humility and with that groundedness, we keep doing the same things. You keep living in your integrity, you stay in alignment, you just keep showing up day after day. And yes, like things can fall apart. And, I think we had a little bit of hubris that was broken with the business investment because I mean, like, my intuition is really good, and I'm telling you, I felt in every fiber of my being like this business investment was gonna work out in our favor, and it was gonna go great, and it didn't, and it didn't. And so, now speaking from a write your story perspective, now I'm trying to figure out what's the moral of that story, because the immediate moral to me is like, you know, don't trust your intuition maybe, kind of. I'm wrestling with that moral. I'm like, I don't wanna that's not the moral that's not the final draft that I want. So I have to find a way to kind of upgrade that moral or rewrite the story in a way where that's not the conclusion of the story.
Well, I love that you brought it back to write your story because it feels like for everyone, and I'm encouraging our listeners, your listeners, Allie, my listeners, and and the way we can use our voices is we are writing new stories and it's unfamiliar, it's uncharted, it's wide open, it's terrifying. Being present and the gift of next year in the astrology and the numerology is this ability to be centered in the now as often as you can. And what I love about 2024 is the 8 reorients us. What can I do right now? How can I take action now? And the 9 asks us to surrender to the now, surrender to the void, the unknown. And it doesn't mean we escape. It can sometimes feel like escapism, but it means getting still, going within, being very conscious and conscientious, self aware of our emotions, the voice in our head, the unconscious material that is coming up. And as a writer, and especially with what you do, I, all the genius writers and the creatives out there who have, whether they're writing fiction or nonfiction, whatever it may be, you always feel the artistry and the higher calling and the story that comes out of nowhere. You think about mythology,
Mhm.
epic stories that come out. And I think about a lot of the hero's journey. And also, I'm going to link in our show notes mine and Allie's conversation, probably what, 6 months ago or so when she came on the podcast. because she offered some brilliant journal prompts thinking about being the hero of your own journey. What is the story you're writing? And I feel like that is very relevant to re listen to for anyone out there because she phrased it in very clear ways to help any of us out there write our story. But right now, there's this component of genius. And when I say genius, I don't mean you're winning a Nobel Prize or you're discovering some new element in the universe or scientific truth and you're going to be lauded for it and recognized, but there's an element of genius, and with genius comes madness.
Mhm.
There is a spectrum to it. It's genius fringes on insanity and madness, and then it's breakthrough into the unknown. It's in the void. That's what this year feels like. So it can feel maddening and infuriating and just out of our grasp at
Yeah.
times. And I encourage anybody out there, I'm encouraging you, I'm encouraging myself as I say this, hang on, don't quit before the miracles. And I know for you, because you've shared this, we've talked about it personally and in podcasts together, but there's this moment when time and space break and you have an intuitive insight and you're like, "Oh, this was the meaning of this. This was the
Yep.
purpose." Like you saying, in my bones, I knew this business venture was going to be successful and amazing. And shoot, it fell flat. It wasn't, but I knew it at the time. And it's almost like it wasn't that you were wrong. It was this divine setup to get you going in one direction for you to learn some new lessons, to be
Yeah.
shifted and to not lose your faith, actually to dig deeper into bigger faith, bigger truths, bigger universal concepts, that universe within. Spiritual people and teachers and gurus out there say all the time, each one of our cells is like a universe, a galaxy
Yeah.
unto ourselves. And that always eludes me. I think about it, I pontificate it,
Mhm.
and I think, gosh, if I'm a universe within and I have millions and trillions of universes within me and I'm one cog in the universe, how does all of that relate? There is something like the universe within is starting to manifest more materially, potently in our world, and I know I'm speaking very esoterically right now, but that's the way it feels. All of these universes within are coming into some kind of cohesion, and right now it can feel disorienting or incohesive at times.
Yes. Yeah, and I think for me, one of the big shifts that I have felt moving from 2024 into 2025 is the move from focus on physical material to more spiritual, esoteric. So in other words, like 2024, I went into the year going like, this is going to be our big year. My book is going to come out in May. It's going to hit my big goal was for it to hit the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list, which never happened. Then this business venture was supposed to come to a head and we were supposed to start building this community midway through the year. So that was going to be this, massive like culmination of 4 years of my husband's hard work and our, financial investment. We were going to get pregnant in 2024, which we did in June and then lost the baby in August. Then my dad is not necessarily related, but all these physical things that we were kind of banking on, counting on, and it really felt like this crescendo, this momentum was coming for this stuff to happen. And then when everything fell through, now it feels like my attention is being shifted from manifesting in the physical. It's like, okay, so if the physical business didn't become what we thought it was going to become, then what did get made manifest? What did get made manifest is my husband and I are more aligned than we've ever been. We are more in love than we've ever been. We're more in tune with one another. What did get made manifest are these sort of like, sixth sense psychic kind of impressions that I'm getting or whatever. Potentially this next book that I want to write is coming up in me because of this experience of loss. So there are these other things that are still in the they're still in the ether. Like I'm not holding a book in my hands. I'm not holding a business. I'm not looking at something physical, but it does feel like something is still being created or being made in the abyss of it. I don't know.
I'm going to relate this back to the energy of dimensions.
Okay.
And I remember years ago when people would talk about this dimension or that dimension, the eighth dimension, the second dimension, the third dimension. It used to really aggravate me because I thought it was so limiting and linear to look at because we're human and our human conceptualization goes to things that we can understand. So if we say, oh, that's first dimensional energy, that's eighth dimensional energy, that's fourth dimensional energy. I used to not use that language because I thought it was almost like a self righteous thing in me. Don't they know this is actually when we call it a dimension, it limits it? Well, this year I started using the language of dimensions because it is easy for people to conceptualize, but when you are speaking about what you've been creating, you're talking to me about the sixth dimension. All right. So I'm going to walk through some dimensions just to
Okay.
clarify this. The first dimension is like the iron core crystal of this earth. It roots us in the solar system. It's like gravity that pulls us to a center, the center within the earth. The second dimension is everything between that iron core crystal called the telluric realm, which is minerals and crystals and layers of strata. It's all under the crust of the earth. The third dimension is this physical plane, a very flat plane that is didactic and linear and pragmatic, tangible, touchable, seeable. If it's real, if I can touch it, then it's real. If I can see it, it's real. If I can feel it, if I can know it, then we move into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is mental and emotional. To me, it's like smoke or clouds. It's where all of the frequencies of our mind and our emotion that is always communicating in frequency form. It's this big cloud of like smoke or dust that's challenging to break through. And the fifth dimension is the space of the heart,
Mm.
love, oneness, connection. The sixth dimension is architecture, meaning it's like if you were thinking in very futurist technological terms, it's like you could throw up everything up on a screen and you are the architect of your reality that
Mm.
comes down through the dimensions. And the sixth dimension communicates with the third dimension, but it has to go through the heart and the mind and the emotions down to the third. So it's like you are becoming this divine architect, and the things that you are saying are being made manifest are intangible, meaning you're moving through fifth and fourth dimensional energy, meaning the relationship with my husband. We are more in love than ever. There is this knowing, it's mental and emotional and bonding and
Mm.
intimacy, truth, connection. It's just beyond touching, but it's happening on the third dimension. Am I explaining this?
Yes.
It's complex, and I'm sharing this because I don't talk about the sixth dimension often, but I've been seeing it come because I've been doing a lot of dream work, closing out the year and moving into the new year, where at night, working with my higher self, as I step into the dream state, I am stepping in as the architect alongside my higher self and moving through almost like a multiple parallel realities and dimensions. But it's like moving into a virtual reality video game. The sixth dimension is like a virtual reality video game.
Do you
And
know what
is
image?
that
It makes
resonating?
total sense, and, like, I feel like I just got a download. This is for me, and I don't know if it will mean anything to anyone else, but for me, when you said architecture, I pictured blueprints, like CAD. We just remodeled the house next door for my mother-in-law just moved in. We bought, like, an old 1950s ranch and remodeled it for my mother-in-law, so I was part of the process of creating the CAD draw I mean, I wasn't doing it. I am not trained to do that sort of thing, but Matt's
Sure.
cousin was making these CAD drawings, and then we would look at them and go, "No, can you move the bathroom over here? Can we move the hallway here?" So I was, watching the whole thing develop, and that was the image that just popped into my head when you were talking, and it's like almost like like a CAD drawing. It's not it's the how even before the house ever changed, we saw 15 CAD drawings. So it's like the CAD drawing changes first, and then the house is built.
Yes. The CAD is and for everybody out there who's in engineering and architecture and design, CAD drawings, and they totally elude me because I am not that
No.
mathematical and articulate, but I can look at a CAD drawing and it's amazing what technology can do. Like you said, can we move the bathroom? Can we do this? That is the impression of we are not only working, we're in bringing in this fifth dimensional, heart centered, compassionate consciousness. And that directly relates to the astrology and numerology of 2025. But we're also working in more futuristic CAD drawing terms. And it's like we are constructing a reality and bringing it has to come through the layers. And not only does it need to move through the mental and the emotional cloudiness and frequencies, and then our physical bodies into physical reality, then it goes back down into the earth to find this new center through
Yeah.
all the minerals, everything down into the center of the earth. And again, I know Allie and I are being a bit esoteric, but also hopefully this is relating to some of the disorientation that
Yes.
many of us are feeling. And to instead of being afraid of it, my big theme has been make 2025 mythic, not apocalyptic.
Mm.
Be the hero
Yes.
of your journey. Write the mythology. And with mythology, when we get into whether it's things like Harry Potter and the hero's journey or Greek mythology, I can be listening to that stuff and bring in spiritual truths and clarity
Yep.
now and things I need to know. So it's almost like we are all writing and publishing new books, new stories for ourselves IRL in real life,
Yes.
IRT in real time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This year is huge and I know for me on a human level, on a messy level, I can sometimes get frustrated with people and minutia and them going into doom and gloom. I understand it because I've been there when it's like, oh, this is so hard. I can't do it. Or why doesn't this person love me? Or why can't I get a new job? And I know those things. I've been through that stuff and I walk through similar human challenges, money, people, relationships, love. I go through it too. It's where I get to practice it in real time. But I also am finding myself and what I'm about to say is harsh, but it's I've had to discern and contemplate this, having less and less tolerance for drama, minutia, chaos of other people. I can beam them love, I can show up, but I also am setting clear boundaries where
Yeah.
it because it feels very linear, very third dimensional, very, for lack of better words, high school. I had a
Yeah.
couple of interactions this year that really hurt my feelings, hurt my soul, and I truly dug deep. I didn't understand what I did wrong. I was accused of something by someone who was projecting, and being able to like really move through that, step back and see through the lens of compassion, but also not accept the dramatic high school behavior, unconscious projections of someone who is not in a similar vibration, but to do it with, gosh, I see the light in you because I
Yes.
see the light in people, and that is part of the energy of the 9, and I wanna share this. The 9 has X-ray vision, and we are generous, and we're like, "I see how beautiful you are and amazing and talented and worthy. Come on, I'm gonna be your friend. I'm gonna love on you. Yes, yes." And it's ego, what it is. It's it's
Yeah.
it's ego reversed of thinking, if I love someone enough, if I stand by their side, then they're gonna change, they're gonna heal. The time is ending for that. For
Yeah.
anyone out there, if you find yourself compromising, acquiescing, trying to fix, save, rescue, change, and that's a big statement. Fix, save, rescue, change. Be mindful of turning that oxygen mask on you first
Yes.
because your power is within. And everybody needs to be on their own journey. And it doesn't mean we abandon or we are unkind or ugly. How can we come into love and compassion and know that our opportunity may be to allow them to be on their own journey and not need to join them, but keep trudging forward in this brave new world?
Yeah. Yeah, what came to mind is to carry the metaphor from before. It's like we bought this 1950s ranch next door for my mother-in-law that was very dilapidated and in terrible condition. Then we started doing these CAD drawings to think through, like, what could it become? Well, like, that's esoteric. It hasn't happened yet. It's on paper, but it's not in reality yet. But it would be almost like going into the old house and trying to fix the smell in the house, or trying to move the furniture around, or trying to sort of, like, just, mess with the stuff that's in the house to try to make it a better house. It's like, "Hey, stop doing that. We're working on the CAD drawings. Like, all of that stuff is gonna get fixed when this new thing gets built." And this I'm saying this for myself too, because I so often get caught in the minutia where I'm trying to fix a problem, fix a problem, fix a problem because my brain really wants to fix it. And it's like, hey, if you removed your energy from fixing that problem and instead you focused on the blueprint, then the problem would fix itself. The problem's gonna go away. When we rebuild the house, like, the smell is gonna be a non-issue. But until then, you have to redo the blueprint, and this is helping me so much, Amanda. It's bringing a lot of peace to me because I feel like that's what's been happening for us this year, where in 2024, I thought we were gonna build this big thing, and instead, we've been redoing the blueprint, and the thing can't be built until the blueprint is done. And I've been so frustrated. I'm like, "We haven't made any progress, we haven't even broken ground." And I'm realizing now, like, "Oh my gosh, like, we drew the whole blueprint this year.
Yeah.
That's what we were
That
doing."
that feels like the theme, obviously, of our conversation, but a theme for 2025 is designing and rebuilding the blueprint. And
Blueprint.
what you were saying was not being distracted by the minutia. Oh, the house smells. Well, that and you know how our attention, because I know me, it's like squirrel, squirrel,
Like,
and I start working on things and it's not low-hanging fruit. It's, oh, this is gonna be a valuable use of my time. Let me get rid of this smell.
yes.
And then it distracts me from the real story, the true
Yes.
narrative, because it's like, oh, this is simple. I can get rid of the smell way easier than designing a blueprint, because designing a
Yes.
blueprint is hard.
It's hard work. Yes.
Hard.
And it takes forever, and there needs to be 15 different iterations, and it's frustrating, and everyone's trying to work together. Yeah, I mean, I feel like just like a huge wave of peace come over me. It feels like this helped me kind of do what I was talking about earlier, where I'm like upgrading the moral to my story this year. And you said something too about what's the real story. I feel like that is a question that I will take as a journal prompt. One of the ways that I've been journaling recently, and this goes with what you were saying earlier about the dream work that you're doing, but one of the ways that I've been journaling is speaking in my morning pages or my journaling to my authentic self, my truest self, my highest self, and just literally talking to her, like asking her questions and seeing what she wants to say back to me. So I'll be like, "What am I missing in all of this?" Or, "What do you wanna show me today that I'm not already seeing?" And when you said that question, I thought, "That's a question that I wanna ask my truest self. What's the real story?" 'Cause 3D Allie is telling the story that, like, It's been so frustrating. We've done everything, and we tried all that we could, and it didn't work out in our favor." And she's sort of pouting, but it's like, what's the higher me saying? What's the real story actually? And I feel like she knows. She knows what the real story is.
Well, and just said something lovely, which is upgrading the moral to my story. And by literally speaking to yourself, I've talked to my higher self for since the moment I talked to my higher self, which I remember exactly when that was. I've shared that in my dark night of the soul, which was I was in this bed in a treatment center and I said, "Hey, higher self," and boom, it just responded. And my soul said, "We've been waiting for you to talk to us." And when I say us, it's because our souls are so multidimensional. It's like this
Yes.
choir of us. We've been waiting for you to talk to us. And it was
Mhm.
God and my soul and everything in this divine cosmic soup responding back beautifully. But upgrading the moral to my story has required me, when I talk to my higher self as of late, these last handful of months, I say, "Hey, Amanda." I call myself by my name in this timeline because if we live in a multiverse, if time is linear and multidimensional simultaneously, and we've got past and future happening and the now. There's so much reality and parallel reality bleeding through and going on. I will specifically call out this genetic makeup and the essence of Amanda in this lifetime. What is the moral Amanda? I've been doing the same thing, journaling, and when I go to bed at night, hey, Amanda. And when I say, hey, Amanda, it's not just the linear, literal Amanda.
Sure.
It's the universal Amanda that is in this timeline that can affect and impact the change in the now through her genetic makeup, her attitudes, perceptions, interactions, relationships, choices, attitude. I keep going back to attitude because it's a huge part of next year's theme is our attitude is where we have this empowerment and controlled empowerment to see things more wondrously beautiful with less force.
Mm,
But upgrading the moral to our stories, that could not be a more beautiful way to think about and conceptualize the energy of the nine. That is the energy of the nine. Is there's an upgrade that happens, and in order to upgrade, we also have to scale. We also have to let go, surrender to the old ways of doing, thinking, being, living that are no longer a part of the journey forward. It's hard stuff.
it's
But
so
it's
hard, and
brilliant.
you know what? It's so hard to upgrade your own moral. One of the things that I like to do to teach myself how to do this is to practice with other people's stories, and it's funny, we were just talking about people getting caught in the minutia. I did this the other day with this woman on Instagram who I follow, who I got sucked into. It doesn't matter, but I got sucked into her telling this very dramatic story about something traumatic that had happened to her, and it was literally took me like 35 minutes to hear her tell her whole story through all these
Yeah.
videos. And, you know, you just get sucked into something like that, and
Mhm.
it was like, I wanna know the ending. So I was listening to her tell this story, and it's, you know, genuinely in the 3D, it's a really traumatic thing that happened to her.
Yeah.
It's horrible that this happened. She's a victim in this situation. But I was also listening to the way that she's telling the story, and I'm hyper attuned to this because this is what I do for work. I was thinking from the standpoint of like, if I were going to sit down and tell her, you know, how to turn the story into a book, how would we want to organize the story? And so I'm always hyper attuned to this. I hear patterns when people tell stories. And one of the patterns that I kept hearing her say was, no one's going to help you. No one's going to help you with this. I called the police and the police aren't going to help me. I called my family and they're not going to help me. I called this person and they're not. This person doesn't give a shit about you. She was saying, nobody cares. Nobody's going to help you. Nobody's going to help you. And in 35 minutes, I heard her say that probably, I don't know, a few dozen times. And I was like, oh, she's laying down the tracks of her story. And she's decided the moral of the story is nobody's coming to help you. And for better or worse, it's easier to see this when you hear someone else tell a story, by the way. If I was in her shoes, I'd probably be telling the story the same exact way because she genuinely was victimized. But when you listen to someone else tell a story, listen for the patterns. Listen for the phrase they say over and over and over again. And then ask yourself, like, okay, so if the moral of a story is nobody's coming to help you, that means what always has to happen is nobody's coming to help you.
It's the unconscious programming.
Yes.
You just articulated, and this is so profound yet simple and true. One of the things, and I'm going to bring this back to some astrology. Mars is retrograde through February 23rd. And on the 6th of January, Mars moved from its retrograde phase in Leo, which is about fire and creativity and action and spontaneity and passion, into Cancer, which is emotional. It's going to create greater emotional stress and strain and pain and sensitivity because it's an emotional intelligence upgrade. But to me, this Mars retrograde is such an opportunity. And I have taken every single day to do this consciously to reprogram the subconscious. And
Mm,
that subconscious program is nobody is going to help. That's the
nobody's
moral of the
gonna help.
story. And when that subconscious program plays on repeat and runs about 85% of our life, that's what manifests. This is what
Yes.
manifestation is.
Yes.
So rewriting the program, that's what I
Yeah.
have been working on and looking at those programs that are running on autopilot that are very low, very outdated. And,
Yeah.
it's kind of hysterical. Months ago, I had a friend who had an injury. And when she was injured, I said, gosh, it was awful, all the things she had to be off work. I said, let me know if I can help you. Please reach out if there's something I can do. If I can't do it, I will let you know, but please don't hesitate to reach out. And I offered it multiple
Yeah.
times. Just reach out and let me know. I don't know how to help you unless you ask or tell me. And if I can't, I'll let you know, but I'm here. And at least I'm here for a phone call. And at some point, she had dropped into all this self-pity and, yeah, of being down and out of work and all the things that were going on.
Sure.
And and she said, people say they're gonna help you, but they really don't. They don't show up. And everything in her energy field was poor, pitiful me. Nobody's gonna help me. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, I said, in my mind, I said, "How many times did I say to reach out?" I said, and I said, "Well, you haven't called me." So it's like she was basically writing that nobody's gonna help.
Yeah.
No one is gonna help. So I think a lot of us actually write that program. Nobody's gonna help
Nobody's
me.
gonna help.
Nobody's gonna help me. I think that's something for all of us to think about. Is that an unconscious program playing? And it takes action on our part. We have to ask for help. And maybe a couple of people do say no, or they really don't have the time or the energy.
Yeah.
But the one person that does can be the game
Yeah.
changer. But
Yes.
we have to play an active role as these architects of writing new subconscious programming. And
Yes.
it's hard. It is
It's
because
really
it takes
hard.
presence and consciousness. And also, right now, with Mars retrograde in Cancer, it's going to be very touchy-feely, meaning you're gonna have your feelings hurt, you're gonna be sensitive about things, you're gonna be reactive. There's all sorts of emotional opportunity right now to go into the heavy emotions, get honest about what you're feeling, whether it's doubt, worry, self-pity,
Yeah.
pain, suffering, and delusion, despair, and say, what is this despair teaching me? What is this pain teaching? What is this rejection teaching me? And what can I do to rewrite the
Yeah.
program? But it takes action and it takes other people, other
Totally.
people.
Yes. And just that conscious observer, that's why I brought up that example because it can be so hard to observe yourself doing this. But when you practice by observing others, it's actually not from a place of judgment, but just from a place of practicing the repetition that you see in someone else's story. And you can do this with your friends without, don't tell them you're doing it. But as they're telling stories, like see if you can notice some repetition in their stories. And you can very quickly tell, what's the subconscious programming that people have running and then practice doing it with yourself. And this is why I like writing as a tool because it's very hard to do this unless you're trained as a therapist or something. And even still, it's hard to do it to yourself.
Yeah.
But when you write, it's impossible to ignore the repetition that you see. You'll see yourself use the same words and phrases over and over again. And when you speak it, it's very easy to ignore it. When you write it, it's like, oh, well,
I
there I
I
said it.
find that with myself all the time, especially when I begin to write and journal, it just becomes channeling, and it's that moment where my hand is hurting because I'm writing so fast, so furiously, but I can see the language repeat, and sometimes I like what I see, but a lot
Yeah.
of times it's this free flowing, I am open, I am available for, and for me, I love words and the frequency of words. So an example is, and a friend of mine brought this up because these words are used often, agency. My good
Mhm.
friend Yael was saying, I use the word agency. She says, Amanda, you use the word sovereignty. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not the same. I'm all about having agency, but agency to me is one hemisphere of the brain. It's action oriented, it's linear and pragmatic, whereas sovereignty takes it up to a new octave of your agency is encapsulated in the sovereignty, but the sovereignty brings in pure positive potential, divinity, and literally, if you do the vibration of the numerology of those words, first of all, agency, it's very masculine, it's very linear.
Yeah.
Sovereign, and I could say sovereignty, and maybe that has a masculine connotation, but I'm like agency, sovereignty, like there's something, and the vibration of the words is
Yeah.
different. So I always look for the higher octave that helps me expand to something that is just a little beyond my reach.
Well,
And
and etymology, I mean, you're onto something. Etymology is another, like, way to explore the real meaning of words.
Right.
I like to use ChatGPT for this. It makes exploring etymology of words very,
Yeah.
very easy, but you could literally type into ChatGPT, "What's the etymology of sovereignty? What's the etymology of agency?" And you'd find out the root words that they came from and how they were first used,
Yes.
and it's fascinating to look at that because you're like, "Oh, this word actually has a different tenor to it, has a different vibration than this
Yes.
word. We use it for a totally different thing."
And language is so important. And when I was in undergrad, that's what I recognized I became fascinated with, words and meaning and diving into religious text and understanding the context in which they were born from, literally what was going on, and the meaning behind the words. And so we did a lot of etymology when I was in undergrad, and I realized how much I loved language and words. I'll tell you something funny. Speaking of this, a couple of months ago, I decided to rewatch all of Harry Potter, start to finish. And of course, I've read all the books, I've seen all of the movies, and in the seventh book, which is a two-part, the movie is two parts. The second part to the seventh book, literally Dumbledore had died, and Harry, it was when Harry died, and Harry goes over to the other side, and one of the Horcruxes, one of Voldemort's pieces of his soul that had been fragmented, was dying, and Harry and Dumbledore in this white corridor talking, and literally Dumbledore says to Harry, "Harry, don't you think words are the magic? The most magical
Mm.
thing there is words." And it's not the exact quote, so you'd have to go back and listen, but he talks about the magic of
Mhm.
words, the
Yeah.
magic of language. And that is something that for me, when I can hear myself speaking, if I can hear, I don't have what I need. Nobody's going to help me. And whether it's the voice in my head saying that or me saying that out loud, how can I consciously recognize myself
Yeah.
saying, nobody's going to help you. You're not going to have enough money, Amanda. You're not going to have this or that. Not. And be able to say, hold on, Amanda. You are creating something new to rewrite that
Yeah.
story. And again, bringing, upgrading the moral to our internal stories and operating systems to turn on this new technology to really write something brand new, a whole new paradigm for ourselves and for humanity.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
Well, I love having you here, and I feel uplifted. I hope everyone out there does after this conversation. It may be one that you have to go back and listen to and re-listen to, but I do encourage you to go back and listen to the conversation Allie and I had months ago. Like I said, I'll link it in the show notes because we did talk about the hero's journey and writing
Mm.
our story. And Allie broke it down in terms of how she has coached and worked with people with her gifts, the patterns she listens to, and how she helps people really get the framework and operating system and the meaning behind it. I think those journal prompts and reflections will help all of us right now as we move into this brave new chapter that is asking us to dig deeper. And I encourage people to do some deep reflection over the last 9 years because we are in this new cycle. So going back to 2016, 2017, the last time we were in a 9 year was 2016, and 2017 was a 1 year. So 2016 and 2017, what have you learned since then? How have you
Mm.
grown? Where were you? And what big changes did you make 2016, 2017? What relationships ended? What jobs ended? Who have you lost since then? What has
Yeah.
gone on in your journey, in your story? And what has it taught you? How has it molded you? That to me is very poignant as we start 2025 out with tremendous reflection. And I think it will be very helpful. Do you have, as far as writing and practices that you think, especially things that you do in the beginning of the year with your own writing, intention setting that might be helpful for anybody out there who can't get themselves to sit down and write, or doesn't feel like they know what they're doing, or maybe does know what they're doing and needs a new tool in their
I
toolkit.
mean, nobody knows what they're doing as a
Right.
writer. That's
Right.
the important thing to know is everyone feels like a misfit when it comes to writing. And I mean, it would take me too long to explain. There's a historical reason why this is true. And the long story short is just that, if you go back a couple hundred years, you'll see that on purpose, only certain people were educated to even learn how to write. And so writing is this activity that we think is saved for the elite few, but actually, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. I'm not pretending to be an astrology expert at all, but I think a big part of this is putting the pen in the hands of everybody.
Yes. It's
So
power to it's power back to the people. Yeah.
you have a voice that needs to be shared. And even if it's only shared to yourself or only shared to the close few people in proximity to you, it's not a matter of being on the New York Times bestsellers list, although maybe you have that in you too. But this practice that I've been using of speaking to my higher self has been really, really powerful for me. And one of the reasons I think it's been that way is because it's breaking the pattern in me that thinks that writing has to be about Instagram or about um like I almost forgot my own message, which is that writing is not about getting followers or building a platform or writing a book or getting a bunch of readers or selling a bunch of copies. The power of writing is that it is channeling.
Yeah.
It is your access point to all of your power, all of your intuition, all of your knowledge, everything. So writing to my higher self has reminded me of that. It's like almost instantly put me back in touch with it. Whereas, I've been able to write books too and share that with people and have an impact on people's lives. And that's also wonderful, but it's a different thing. And I think the thing that I care the most about is helping to connect people back to that access point. And then, my career has been a lot about helping people get books published, which has been fine, but it's not really what I'm here to do. I don't think so.
It's evolving, and I'm
Yeah.
so excited. Thank you for sharing that with everyone, and your insights that we do all feel like misfits as writers, even the most genius writers who on paper and in the masses have had success or an impact in their writing
You would be
feel that way.
shocked. You would be shocked. The people whose books you have read and loved say to me, "Well, I'm not really a writer. That was kind of a fluke," is what they'll say,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, because it's artistry, and again, it goes back to genius and
Yeah.
bringing something genius in, and it happens by doing
Mhm.
and showing up and practicing and being in real life very presently, and also with fear and with excitement simultaneously. That wide open card that really sets the stage. It's us bringing back this ability to write our own stories, and I really appreciate you for sharing personally today with everyone, and then bringing your expertise and your wisdom and this evolving meaning for you that is going on in real time. It really humanizes it. I think a lot of people can relate. Wait, before we get off too, this came to me earlier, and then we were talking about something. Remind me of your birthday.
5/30/1983.
Oh, you're an 8 attitude number.
That
And
makes
I
that fits.
Okay. So literally, let me just break this down energetically for you and anybody out there. And of course, the numerology guidebook is out. It's got astrology and numerology and month over month numerology. It is on this platform. I am so proud of it. And literally, I mean, I poured my heart and soul to it. I channeled into it. I used all of this expertise, but it's something that I will use every day myself because
Amazing.
I've done this the last handful of years. So you can go to soulpathology.com and get it. It's definitely a simple, easy investment that will guide you through the year. But the numerology, so you're an 8 attitude number. 5 plus 3 plus 0 equals 8. In 2024, you were in a 7 personal year in an 8
Okay.
year. And the 7 is seeking and searching and going deeper and diving in, coming out with all these aha moments and spiritual truths and hard realities that become somehow meaningful and divine. I mean, that just relates, right? And also
Yes.
you needing time alone. Allie shared with me before we started recording that I've had to set some boundaries when I've got my husband and the kids and things are going on. And if I need a moment, if it's too much for me, I've got to go have my alone time. The seven needs solitude.
Yeah.
And sometimes the seven isolates, but it also, when it's in a spiritual place, it's really about quiet time going within solitude. And then universally, we've been in an 8 year. So it's been
Yeah.
your vibe. So the drive and the push. Well, this year for you, 2025, you are in an 8 year. And everyone out there, I want to say this, and I will dive more into numerology, personal years, the numerology of the nine in the next handful of weeks. I will definitely share some specifics around this, but everyone is in a master year. Your attitude number is the personal year you are in this year. And that has to do with the special characteristics mathematically and energetically of the nine. But
Cool.
so everybody, whatever your attitude number is, so if you're a six attitude, a four attitude, a nine attitude, that is actually the personal year you're in. So you are in an eight personal year under the blanket or stars of the 9 years. So you're going to have that drive and momentum and empowerment, all of those eight lessons that are very much about bringing things into the material world, making the dreams manifest. And the nines will continue to say, what do you need to let go of? What are you healing?
Okay.
What are you shedding? What are you detoxing in order for you to be in this
Mm.
higher moral of the story you're writing? So it numerologically, I'm like, "Oh,
You're like, yeah, it
it's
all
epic. It's so epic. It makes sense."
oh my
Makes
goodness.
sense.
Thank you for sharing that. I always learn so much from you, Amanda. And honestly, like this conversation is no different. I just feel like a wave of peace came over me because something clicked. But that idea of the blueprint is going to stick with me for a long time. And that I've been working on the architecture of something that hasn't come into physical form yet. But that's because we haven't even broken ground on the thing yet. It's like we've been working on the blueprint.
The feeling
Right.
is mutual. I learned so much from you. I feel seen with you, Allie. I really do, and I could not be more appreciative to have you as a friend in my life and then get to share your energy with my audience
Mhm.
and people out there. And if you are new to Soul Sessions podcast or you haven't listened to Allie's podcast, Write Your Story, check it out. I mean, you can already tell the wisdom and the knowledge and expertise that she has, but the energy she brings comes from a place of searching and growing and healing in this constant evolution of our stories.
Mm.
So check that out. But thank you for coming on. I feel uplifted. I hope this gives everyone good food for thought, but encouragement to stay the course, but chart new territory
Mm.
simultaneously this
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Because it's
I love
epic,
it.
it's volatile, there's change on the horizon, new truths will be coming to the surface. I think it's going to be startling and also confronting in a lot of ways, but we are here for it. We are so uniquely designed to respond and to respond with potential that we don't know yet exist.
Yeah.
That's where my hope lives is I'm going to have the wherewithal, the knowledge, the people, the places and experience to respond with whatever life presents me with, and it's going to have meaning, have purpose. It's going to matter and be bigger, more loving, more compassionate, something greater, something
Amen to
infinitely
that.
greater. Yeah.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Well, happy New Year, everyone. And thank you, Allie Fallon,
Thank
for
you for
being
having me. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone, take care. Thank you for joining us. And I am wishing each of you out there an epic and a mythic 2025. Lay the groundwork now and know that whatever story you are writing, you get to be the narrator and you get to do it from your higher consciousness. Write your story, write it big, go big or go home. Be well, everyone.